Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking through some fairy tale retelling recommendations and chatting through some of my favourite fairy tale retellings. So the book that prompted this video is Daughter of the Forest by G. Maria, which I read in the month of March, and I absolutely adored this book, so I definitely recommend it. And this is the first in a series, so it can be read as a standalone as it does wrap up, but there are a couple of loose threads which continue into the rest of the series. It originally was written as a trilogy, but I believe this was then continued into a 6-book series. And in this first book, it is a retelling of the 6 Swans. And you're following a main character, Saoirse, and her family and her brothers in rural Ireland in maybe the 6th century when England and Ireland were at war, or there were warring war bands going between the two nations. And you're following her and her brothers, and it's very magical, it's very whimsical fairy tale. I loved the writing in this. It was quite a slow burn, I would say, that it starts off, and I wasn't really too sure of the direction. I knew the rough outlines of the fairy tale and I was waiting for that to take place, or that fairy tale, that prompt to start happening. And it doesn't really happen for the beginning of the book, because the beginning is lots of exposition, lots of getting to know our characters, getting to know the world. But once that's all done, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I loved the world, I loved our characters, I loved seeing them, watching them. This is adult, and it is, I think, one of the few adult books that I have in this recommendations list. A lot of the retellings that I've read have been YA, and I would love some more adult ones if you have any that you would recommend to me, because I thoroughly enjoyed this. So if there are any adult fairy tale retellings, then please let me know, because I think the majority of them do seem to be YA, but this one I thoroughly enjoyed and would definitely recommend it if you enjoy a fairy tale retelling, as I think it is just like top tier fairy tale retelling, whilst also really standing alone as its own story. Maybe that's because I don't really know the fairy tale that well, that it's not one that's retold that often, that I don't know it, I've not seen, there's no like Disney adaptation as far as I'm aware of this, so maybe that's why I feel as though it stands quite well by itself. A rather more well-known fairy tale retelling is Beauty and the Beast. I feel as though there are quite a few Beauty and the Beast retellings out there. It seems to be quite a popular one to retell. A couple that I have really enjoyed. I have really enjoyed A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. This one is a portal fantasy, so you're following a main character, Harper, and she has cerebral palsy, I believe, and she gets sucked into this alternate world where there is magic, and she's going from Washington DC to this fantasy world, and in this world you are following Ren, who is the prince of this realm, and he is tasked with finding a beauty, love, to break the curse upon his realm and being the beast. So that's the start of this, and I think this one was just really well done. I don't think it did anything to original, because I mean, it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, you can only retell it so many ways, but I think it was well written, I think it was well done. I was really invested in these characters and seeing their romance blossom, and seeing the side characters as well, because I think the side characters were really well done. I do think this is a trilogy, and this first book is by far the strongest. Most definitely this is the strongest in the trilogy. I do think the third book wraps up quite well, and unfortunately the second book, it follows some of the side characters from this one, and I really liked seeing them as side characters. At least one of them is a new entry and the other one's a side character, but I think this one is definitely the strongest in the trilogy, and maybe it should have stayed as a standalone. But I thoroughly enjoyed this one, definitely recommend it if you're after a fun, fast-paced YA retelling of Beauty and the Beast. The other Beauty and the Beast retelling is quite, I guess, well known, and that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, the first book in that series. That pulls from Beauty and the Beast. I believe it also pulls from one called Tamlin or something like that, but you're following a main character, Feyre, and she gets taken to the fairy realm where she has to fall in love with the beast. And there's a lot more that goes on to it, and I believe the second book is more of a Hades Persephone retelling, but it does go off in its own way, and it's not so much a retelling. There is a lot more to it than just this retelling aspect, but I think it has that as like a prompt to the story. Another retelling where I have a couple of recommendations for the same fairy tale, and it's a fairy tale that I don't actually know that well, like maybe because it doesn't have a Disney adaptation. It doesn't have a Disney adaptation, so it's not that well known of a fairy tale, and that's the Goose Girl. So the first recommendation of that being The Goose Girl by Shannon Hale, which I adored growing up as a teenager, and I have reread it as an in my 20s, and I loved it. As again, like, I just adore that book. I don't know if it's nostalgia, but I adore the Goose Girl as a Goose Girl retelling. The crux of the fairy tale is that you're following a princess who's been betrothed to a prince of another kingdom, realm, and on her journey to that kingdom, her maid kills, or her maid has hired other people, and she ends up taking the place of the princess. So she kills all of the loyal guards and takes the place of the princess, but the princess ends up escaping and becoming the maid in some ways, or running away. And that's the start of the fairy tale. I won't go too much into it so it doesn't spoil too much, but that's that. And in this one you were following the princess and her life following that traumatic event. And I was so invested. I was so invested in her. I loved her, seeing her journey, her character development, the romance. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, I loved it. I think when I read it, I didn't realize it was a fairy tale retelling. And then this is the first book in the books of Bayan. So there are 4 other books following other characters. And I don't believe the other ones are fairy tale retellings. They're just following some of the characters that you meet in the Goose Girl. But I love the world. I love the characters, and I would definitely recommend it as a series. And then the other retelling of that fairy tale is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. I read this one last year, so I read it very recently. And this one, you are following the maid. The other side of the story has been flipped. So I guess an anti-hero in a way, but you get to see her motivations, why she chose to do what she did, where that prompt came from. So you're following her. And then in this book, you're following her as she is trying to escape the life that she's in, and she gets cursed that she will turn into jewels, because that is her greed. She is greedy, and so because of this, she is trying to steal things, and she steals the wrong artifact, and she is cursed to turn into her greed. And so you're following her as she tries to deal with this curse and break the curse, as well as some of the traditional elements from that original fairy tale. But I really thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm definitely intrigued to pick up more by Margaret Owen. But if you're after different Goose Girl retellings, then there we go, the Goose Girl. A series that definitely has some Disney adaptations, and I feel like this one is quite well known in terms of fairy tale retellings, and that is the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. Again, it's been a few years since I've read these ones, but I ate these up. They were so addictive. So the first book in the series is Cinder, and that's a Cinderella retelling. Then you have Scarlet, which is Little Red Riding Hood, Cress, which is Rapunzel, and Winter, which is Snow White. I really ate these up. Like, I remember reading them like maybe 5-ish years ago, 5-6 years ago, and I just binged the whole series. Like, binged it. I couldn't stop reading it. I just had to know. Some of them are quite long. Like, they get quite chunky towards the end of the series, and so this is like it's a fairy tale retelling, but with very modern sort of space sci-fi elements. And I just really enjoyed that mixture. I enjoyed like the romances. I think they were well written. I think they were quite fun. I enjoyed the sort of the sci-fi elements that were interspersed within. I enjoyed how the series, that different characters appeared in the books as they went along, and that they were all incorporated. That it was, although you had the fairy tales, you also had a narrative that flowed through the whole series. So I just totally enjoyed it. If you're after like a fun YA bingeable time, then I'd recommend it. I feel like they would stand up. I think, like, if that's what you're after, if you're after a fun YA, I think they would stand up, because I just found them so fun and enjoyable. I have a Rapunzel retelling, and that is A Spindle Splintered by Alex Lee Harrow. So Alex Lee Harrow is doing these novellas of fairy tales. So this is the first one. I think it was, what's the series called? Fractured Fables or something like that. Is it? No, it's not Rapunzel. Oh, Sleeping Beauty. It's Sleeping Beauty. The amount of times I want to say this is Rapunzel, but it's not. It's Sleeping Beauty. I've read this as well, and I still end up getting the fairy tales mixed up. So this is a Sleeping Beauty retelling. It's a portal fantasy, again following a main character from our own world that gets sucked into it. I really enjoyed this. I like this mixture of the portal fantasy, and her new one coming out is A Mirror Mended, which I believe is Snow White, or it might be the evil queen from Snow White that it's focused around. But I think the main character from this ends up in that. I do have an advanced copy of that, which I definitely plan to get to very soon. But I think this was quite fun. It was really fun. It has illustrations throughout. which I found just, you know, a fun reading experience. So if you're after a very quick retelling, or I don't know if you necessarily call this a retelling, I'd say it's just more like using it as a starting point or using it as an idea and then working from that, then I would recommend this. And as well, if you don't mind having sort of the modern influences included within it as well. For an adult title, I feel like I've had a lot of a YA here, but for an adult one, I would recommend Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Spinning Silver is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. For this one, I really liked it, but I didn't like it as much as Uprooted. Uprooted is my favourite one, and I guess you could say Uprooted is a bit like a Beauty and the Beast, maybe, retelling. I don't know if that one has like a fairy tale retelling that's very distinct for it, but I preferred Uprooted, which I think is a very unpopular opinion. I think a lot of people prefer Spinning Silver, the Rumpelstiltskin retelling, but I don't know, personal taste. But the Rumpelstiltskin retelling, Spinning Silver, I really enjoyed it. I liked the setting. It was quite a cold setting. I liked our main character. She has a lot of spunk, I would say, that she has drive. Yeah, she is saving her family because her family had fallen on hard times at the beginning of the book, and so she decides to start trying to take on her father's job, which was being a tax collector, I believe. It's been a while since I've read it. And so she actually goes in and she's like, no, you're going to pay your taxes, or you're going to pay me back because I'm now broke because of my goodwill or my father's goodwill. And so she does that. But again, I really like that one. I know that it's not a festive season currently, but if you're watching this during the festive time, or if you're after a Christmassy read, then I would recommend Midnight in Everwood by M.A. Kuzniar. This is a Nutcracker retelling, and I adored this. I really thoroughly enjoyed this one. I was so swept up in this story when I read it last year. And this one, you're following, what's her name? You're following our main character, Marietta, and she is a ballerina in Nottingham in the early 1900s. And at the beginning of the book, they get a new neighbour, and she feels like she is stuck in her life, and that she wants to be a ballerina. That's what she wants to do and be, but she is stuck by the constructs of society at that time, and that her family do not want her to pursue this path and become a professional ballerina. Like, she needs to be in society. But they get a new neighbour who can construct or can build dolls' houses and the Nutcracker. And she ends up falling through into the world of the Nutcracker, or Everwood. And I just adored it. I just was so sucked up. It was so magical. I think this has been sold as adult, but I would class it as YA because I found it read more YA to me, but I found it really fun and enjoyable, and I was just so wrapped up. I think it was quite magically written, that I could see elements of it. Like, you could see if you're hungry, don't read this because there was lots of like food imagery, or like cookies and sweets and desserts, and that imagery within this. But I very enjoyed this. I really liked our characters and I liked the world, and I think this is a very pretty edition. So yeah, it's got a nice golden ballerina on it, so very pretty, and I'll definitely read more by this author. And then my final recommendation, so breaking away from the more Western fairy tales, is The Wrath of the Dawn, which is inspired by 1001 Nights. This one by Renee Adier, and it's a duology, and the first book, it really starts with the prompt of the king that kills his wife after each night. And you're following our main character, Shahrazad, as she goes to marry him and then tells him stories every night so that he will not kill her. And it goes from there. And I really thoroughly enjoyed the duology. This one, again, I read quite a few years ago now, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was very well written, well done. Again, I was invested in trying to figure out why he's killing his wives, what's prompting that. Can she survive? Can she keep telling these stories and keep surviving and keep his interest? What's the prompt for the murders? So that one, again, I really thoroughly enjoyed. I think it was well done, well written, and I enjoyed it. So there are some fairy tale retellings I have thoroughly enjoyed and would definitely recommend. If you have any that you would recommend to me, then please let me know, because I'm definitely after reading some more adult fairy tale retellings, and I'm definitely going to be continuing on with the Juliette Marillier series that I've started, because I believe she has quite a few books out, because she's been writing for many years. So I've got a big back catalogue of books that I can read through, and I think she has retold quite a few fairy tales, but if you have any recommendations for me, then please let me know. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!